Don't become attached to the outcome. Become committed to putting yourself up there and getting in the game.
We RAD Dads, bringing a soft edge to a hard topic. Join us every week as we talk to real people with real stories, from the everyday single parent to family professionals, and find entertainment along the way. Join me, Walter J. Eggers, as I discover and share wisdom. Positive changes start here. Featured episode. Hello and welcome back again, Rad Dads. Walter here with you, and I just wanted to take some time to intro this older episode of Jason Mackenzie. Now, Jason was one of the first people I reached out to, and I don't know what type of fortune lie ahead. After this interview with Jason, we had become pretty good friends, and he's been a sounding board ever since. In fact, I want to throw out credit to episode 52 to Jason Mackenzie, who encouraged me to just lay it out there, because I was struggling with some things, and vulnerability is his big deal. So as I was listening to some parts of this interview that you're about to hear, I realized just in 1 year how outdated it really is. At the time of recording, Jason was working full time, and he has since handed in his resignation and moved on. He has started, completed, published, and is now for sale his own book called The Dadly Book of Open. Jason is also highly involved in masterminds as well, and it's just really awesome to see the guy. He's like a freaking rocket ship, man. Anyway, I don't know if you can tell, but my voice is still really jacked right now. I'm circling the drain, so to speak. If it weren't for Dayquil, I'm not sure where I'd be. But hey, I digress. I'm trying to enjoy and relax a little bit on this hiatus. We'll see how that goes. Anyway, Jason's book, The Dadly Book of Open, is available on Amazon for $19.99 or on Kindle for 99 cents. And speaking of Amazon, I really appreciate you guys using the quick links and the Amazon affiliate link. It's been really helping out the podcast, by the way. So anytime you go over to Amazon, just remember to go through the quick links. That's it on the album art through the iTunes player. If you tap the colorful We Rad Dads banner, there'll be a brief clip of show notes, and there'll be a couple of quick links, one of which will take you to Amazon. So go ahead and complete your transaction after clicking on that affiliate link. And what that does is it allows We Rad Dads to get a very small percentage of your purchase, and it doesn't cost you anything extra. It's a win-win. You get what you want, and we get a little bit of funding to push us in the right direction. Also, we have an Audible affiliate as well. If you're into audiobooks, I highly recommend the Audible affiliate. And as of yet, I don't think Jason's book's on Audible, but I know he's working on it. So sooner or later, that will be the case. Anyway, hey, I wanted to take this moment and thank you yet again for helping me do what I do. And I'm looking forward to coming back full time with We Rad Dads at the 1st of February 2017. So enjoy this rebroadcast of Jason Mackenzie. All right, hello and welcome back, Rad Dads. Today I have a very special guest, someone I'm extremely excited to share with you. Today I have with me Jason Mackenzie. Hello, Jason.
Hello, Walter. Good to be here.
We're happy to have you. Jason is in IT in the automotive manufacturing industry. Jason's a blogger, a speaker, a writer, an informal coach, an athlete, but most importantly, he's a father and husband. Jason's been featured on podcasts such as Love is a Verb and The Better Human Show, and runs 2 websites, from drunktomonk.com and The Book of Open. Jason, fill in the blanks there. Welcome, and tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Thanks again for having me on. It's a real honor to be here with you. I'm a dad of 2 daughters. They're 12 and just about to turn 11 years old next week. I'm a husband. Married for the 2nd time, and I've had quite an interesting story. I went through a pretty tragic experience with my first wife. She struggled with bipolar disorder for a long time and eventually committed suicide. She was the biological mother of my girls. So we can talk more about that, I'm sure, but that was quite an experience that changed me forever. And then, there was a lot of resulting implications of that time that took me quite a while to get over. So I developed quite a severe drinking problem during that time as a method of coping. And then I think afterwards I continued to drink. And I think one of the reasons I did it was to probably prevent myself from having to go through the grieving process, although I was not aware of it at the time. So anyways, I've overcome all that, and I have learned a hell of a lot.
Yeah.
I'm living a better life now than I ever have, and I want to share what I'm learning because I feel like I'm learning every day. I see possibilities everywhere, and I want to share that with people. So yeah, that's me.
No, that's fantastic. Just seeing those possibilities everywhere, that right there is the result of a positive mindset shift. And, I remember those days. I'm sure you do too, where, seeing the bright side, seeing possibilities, being optimistic was literally impossible. It felt like this insurmountable obstacle. But, we'll get out there soon enough. You threw out a ton of hooks just right now. So,
okay.
That was awesome. And yeah, like I said, Rad Dads, Jason's got a lot to say. And some very important things that you need to hear. So let's just get to know you a little bit more here. Back in the day, you had your favorite style or band or whatever, and you look back now and you're kind of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, I did that. So what was that? What's that for you?
Oh, that was glam metal, my friend. I was a child of the 80s, and I had in my room was completely covered in posters from Circus magazine, and I think the other one was Metal Edge or something. And it was divided into three. Motley Crue had the biggest section. Then I had Poison, and then followed by Cinderella. So that was tight jeans, jean jacket.
The acid washed?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Skin tight.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was, I look back at some of the pictures and that was a decade, let's call it a lost decade.
Everyone has their coming of age, like trials and or errors. And, pop culture has an influence. It's kind of funny though, but yeah, you look back in the day and you're like, oh my gosh.
And some of those bands are still around, Motley Crue somehow they're still alive.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's
astonishing. Real quick, of those top bands you have there, number one top song in your head right now, go.
Oh, Home Sweet Home.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes. Great song. Great song. So, you're a guy like the rest of us here. And I know you like humor. So what's your favorite guy humor or stupid movie? I'm a big movie guy myself.
I think, anything with Will Ferrell, probably, the dumber, simpler, cruder the humor, the better. I'm thinking The Other Guys, old school. That type of humor, I could watch that all day. There'd be times I'm sitting here, with my wife, and I'm basically falling off the couch, laughing my head off, and she's just not looking at the movie. She's looking at me thinking, oh my God, what have I done by marrying this man?
Yeah. You know what? You need that basic result of laughter. And even the stupider, the better half the time, I love it. Awesome. So at being a dad, I hope you've been able to now recognize some of the struggle that maybe your parents had. Tell us a brief story about your childhood where you gave your parents gray hair, something that, when it happens, it absolutely was not funny, but you look back now and nostalgically tell that story.
Yeah, there was quite a few. I had what I would call a challenging teenager year. So, I'm not sure that one specifically stands out, but there was a lot of drinking related episodes of, a couple times being brought home by the police and, probably teenage mayhem that trended toward the more extreme side of teenage mayhem, I would say. But I looked at it at the time as I was really full of, or really convinced of my own invincibility, as most teenagers are, and really, really had a strong belief in the fact that I knew everything, and that my parents had very little of value to offer me. So at the time, I see it much differently now, of course.
Right.
But yeah, there was many hair graying moments for them. So thankfully, they've forgiven me for them all.
Thank goodness. And that's, God, as a parent, I'm scared of that time. I'm scared of, losing that control and being completely disregarded as anybody with any viable information. So, if you figure out how to kind of navigate those waters, just go ahead and let me know, because we'll all be there sooner or later.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I actually don't worry about that at all, because I have the relationship I've built with my daughters is it's really interesting. We have a very open and honest relationship. I've been honest with them about the things I did as a teenager. I've been, see, what my parents didn't do is they didn't have context. right? So everything was the same level of severity, regardless of the situation it happened in. So what that meant was I felt like they overreacted about everything, which meant that I tuned them out. So when I think about my daughter, right, and I think, say, for example, that, I don't know, say I catch her smoking pot or something. You know, if she's failing out of school, she's in trouble, she's running with a bad crowd, blah, 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 all those things, I'm going to react a specific way. If she's a star athlete, if she's getting good grades, she's got great friends, she's, you know what I mean? Like that's a different situation. It's not that it's acceptable or whatever, but it's that, you know, context is very important in deciding how we handle these situations with our kids. And I think that will help them feel comfortable in being open with me and my wife. I'm not saying they're going to tell us everything, but I'm pretty optimistic about it.
Right. It sounds like you have a couple of key real crux concept, which are honesty and openness with your kids, just being there being involved emotionally and physically being present, and then the context. I think that's a pretty good dynamic, and that's a great approach. How about this? Tell us something about you that nobody or very few people know. I know you're an open book, and you know vulnerability is literally your thing, but there's got to be something entertaining, fun fact, tidbit that you've got for us.
I'll be open here. I don't know if this is a fun fact or this is just a quirk, but I obsess about my weight like in a ridiculous way. Like I'm really athletic, and it's really important to me to be lean, and I am really neurotic about it. And it's neurotic to I don't want to be this way, but I'm pretty neurotic about it. So that's a pretty personal thing that I don't share with too many people.
Okay. So, no, that's really fair, actually. And you know what? We'll get into that conversation, because I know I think I have an idea where that stems from, but I would love to talk with you about that too. I think body image is crucial. And then through your struggles and then to where you are now and have that, I totally understand the feeling of being in shape, getting in shape, the bravado the confidence that it brings with it, and just the overall healthy feeling that you get from that. It's the best addiction I think I can have.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. So we're going to jump into a little bit of subject matter here. And we at Rad Dads, I have a mantra and words of motivation that I really like to start off every show with, and it's a quote from Charles Swindoll. It says, "Life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it." How does that resonate with you in your life currently? Oh, that resonates in a very powerful way with me. I totally agree with that. I look at things in a much different way right now, where I think, I observe things in a more, I guess, objective way. I don't let life carry me away anymore, or I don't let myself live life on autopilot. So I feel like like I was saying earlier, there's possibilities everywhere. And instead of seeing when something happens, for example, where I used to, in a way that crippled me, I used to see, constraints and limitations in every single thing that was in front of me or that happened to me. Now I see it as an opportunity to learn, and, a challenge to be overcome, and an opportunity to create something that didn't exist before. So it's a totally different way of looking at it. And we were talking before that we started recording it. It just makes me feel like the possibilities in my life are unlimited, regardless of what happens. I will find a way to make something good come from whatever happens to me. Absolutely. That's it. The very quintessential mindset shift is just starting to see opportunity where others see failure, or where you used to see failure yourself. I'm trying, and I am succeeding in making that mindset shift myself. And now I'm doing the same thing, as I'm seeing possibilities, and it is just, it's a great feeling, especially, I know, coming from our histories where life wasn't so great. It's not so far back. And now seeing this and feeling this way, it's just like, it's almost as if you're a young kid and it's Christmas, you just get these gifts, and wow, this is an opportunity, and this is an opportunity, and that didn't work out the way I wanted. But you know what they say, one door closes and another one opens, but you got to find it.
Yeah. You have to be willing to see it. Right. Yeah. They're always there. And, just to follow up with that a little bit, I used to think that people that created, like those people that created opportunities had some type of innate something, some, X factor or whatever that I did not possess. And that's why they were successful. And, it is so simple. It's just being willing to make the choice and being, to see it and being willing to make the choice to put yourself out there and take some risks. Risks of exposing yourself, risks of showing the authentic you, risks of not being sure what you're doing, but knowing that just showing up is 90% of the battle. Just change the way you think about all that stuff will change your entire life.
Yeah. Those risks, those very ones that you just mentioned are the right risks to take.
Yep.
Question here. Do you have an initial reaction when a man identifies himself as a single parent, a step parent, or a stay-at-home dad? And what are they?
I think my initial reaction would be the same as it is with pretty much everybody that I meet. And that's, that sounds like it could be an interesting story. I would like to know it.
Yeah.
That's really about it. Everybody is, it's really interesting because I've become a very, as I've, I guess, progressed in my level of awareness, and I've become a much less judgmental person. Mm-hmm. So there was a time in my life where my initial response was to leap to some kind of judgment, regardless of whether I had the facts or whatever. I had preconceived notions about a lot of different things, and I like to put people and situations into those, nice, neat boxes that I had, and I would judge people as a result. Now it would just be like, wow, that's good for you. Like, would you mind sharing? I would try to create a situation where we could share our stories with each other. That's really about it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I resonate completely exactly with what you're saying. And I think that's, from the other side now, gaining that perspective, and being inquisitive about that. And I agree. I'm a stories guy. I would love to find out, how does that work? And, let's talk about it. Whereas I found myself in those roles, and it's nothing I'd ever planned for. And I was just like, oh, this is, I wasn't happy about it. And I eventually saw the opportunity in it, going back to our previous question. And once I did that, my perspectives changed completely. So anybody out there who has doubts, who thinks that they're less of a person, who thinks, their life is over because these are your circumstances, we're both of us, every single one of my guests are here to tell you that is not true.
Well said.
That is why that question is in there, just for those people. Okay. Get into some topic here. We're gonna dive deep, and, just kind of, letting the audience know here, we're probably gonna talk about things that are uncomfortable, but as you know, we RAD Dads, that's what we do. We bring these conversations to light. We're having those conversations that, you may not have in person. You may not venture out and seek on your own. So that's what I want to bring to you. And hopefully from that, you can gain wisdom and perspective. That's what I'm trying to bring here. Now comes the bomb crater. When your life absolutely explodes due to an event or series of events, you are left in a smoking pit, blurry vision, and ringing ears. Your vision is limited, and you can only see the hole you are in and the sky above. You're literally and physically at rock bottom. Jason, tell us about your bomb. What event or string of events led you there?
Okay, so here we go. As I mentioned earlier, I would say this is a string of events, and there was a number of bombs, and I handled them in different ways. So I would say the first bomb that happened was my wife, and I had, we had been together for, probably 13, maybe 12 years at this time, developed bipolar disorder. And I mean, for your audience members who may not know what that is, or it's also called manic depression, it is horrific. And she was a police officer actually, and she went from, let's say, a successful, ambitious person to doing drugs, living in a homeless shelter, being institutionalized, getting electroshock therapy, spending us to bankruptcy, and every other terrible thing you can imagine. So, I was a part of watching my wife and my life self-destruct in front of my eyes and feeling completely helpless to do anything about it. Just the only thing I really had at that time was trying to protect my kids. I had 2 daughters I had to raise. And even though my wife was, physically around sometimes, mm-hmm. there was also times when she left. Like one time she moved 3 hours away for 5 months, just out of the blue, because these are the type of behaviors that people that suffer from bipolar disorder exhibit. So, that was, I'll tell you, that was really something else, because I had created, I think what made it so difficult was I had created a real, probably like we all do to a certain extent, but I had created a very clear definition of what family success looked like to me.
Yes.
Or life success, let's say. It was moving up the corporate ladder, getting a house. We had the house with the pool, so that was good. Things
Check.
were progressing things were progressing as they were supposed to. 2 kids, beautiful daughters, literal or figurative, I guess, white picket fence, and it was all destroyed. And I couldn't really do anything about it. And I can remember sitting in my house with my wife 3 hours away, never knowing when she was going to come back, if she was going to come back. My kids being 3 hours north at my parents' for like a month at a time, sometimes 2 months at a time, and me sitting in the wintertime in a empty house in the dark, drinking myself to passing out, thinking what happened to my life, basically, and I don't know how to get it back. So so there was that. I mean, that was obviously very difficult, and I look back on it now and I appreciate much more how difficult it was. I didn't have any time to think about that at the time. It was really just a matter of, the living day to day sounds a little cliche, but it is true. It's, sometimes hour to hour, just trying to get through to the next event that happens. So that, obviously took a toll on me. And then we ended up separating. And then about a year and a half after we separated, she ended up committing suicide. And that was, I still loved her. I still cared about her. It's just, it was impossible to be with her. And so while we were separated, I had the kids most of the time. It was very, very, very stressful. A separation is stressful enough to begin with, but then when one person is mentally ill on top of it, it was hell. Yeah. And but one of the things with bipolar disorder is that, you slowly and inevitably destroy your life. So maybe I shouldn't, inevitably is not the right word, but it's very insidious. So you keep making choices that result in terrible real life consequences. And eventually she was left with nothing. She had no friends. She had no, she was never going to be able to really go back to work as a police officer. She wasn't close with her family. She was alone. The kids were with me all the time. I had met somebody new at this point. And I think that for her, I see it now as she viewed taking her own life as a final release for me and our daughters, so we could move on and not have to move on and start a new life. So that was a time bomb, bomb rather. Yeah. So, and I'll tell you, sitting your kids down, they were relatively young at the time, 6 and 5. I found out she died at about midnight, and I had to sit there and stare at the clock till about 8 o'clock in the morning when they got up, just thinking, oh my God, how am I going to, how do you do this? So that was a pretty terrible experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So, and just to continue quickly, then I would say the next thing was, and this was probably of everything that happened, the next bomb was the most important one. And that was the one where I finally realized I had to stop drinking. So I continued to drink for probably 4 years after she died. And my wonderful, amazing new wife, I use it as an excuse, right? Like, listen, I've been through hell. I've raised 2 kids. I've done all these things. I'm a hero. Leave me alone. I'm going to drink, and, nobody's been through what I've been through, so give me a break. But the thing is that starts to really wear thin. That might be okay, like for at the very beginning, 4 years later, that's starting to wear very, very thin. And I would sit there and I would think, and she started to push me harder and harder, right? About not so much telling me that, you have to stop drinking because drinking is bad, but starting to tell me, like, you are not living up to your potential as a human being. People see you as that drunk guy. You are capable of more. You need to be a better example for your daughters. Like important things that kind of, hit me right where, and it spoke to me in a way that I could understand. And I can remember right near the end, sitting in her office in our house, and her saying this stuff to me, and me saying the same ridiculous rationalizations that I always said, I'm good enough and blah, 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 all this, trying to rationalize why being drunk every night is okay. Like, it's something a crazy person does, right? So yeah. And I can remember very distinctly seeing that what I was saying no longer was working on her at all. She was looking at me like I was pathetic, actually. And I remember just being terrified. Like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? And I can remember also sitting and thinking, almost listening to my voice from outside my body in a way, listening to the words I was saying, thinking, what has happened to you? Like, you sound insane. And so to make a long story short, I ended up waking up in the middle of the night on August 30th, 2014, 2 o'clock in the morning. I sat up, and keep in mind, I had tried to quit drinking a million times and failed every single time. And I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and it was like something you wouldn't believe if you saw it in a movie. I just felt like, oh my God, I think I'm done drinking. I think I'm done. And I went and woke my wife up, and I mean, I said, I know that what I'm about to say is going to sound absurd. And there's no historical basis for you to believe anything I'm saying. All I'm saying is I think I quit drinking. It feels really different this time. And I've never touched a drop since, and I've never had any interest in doing it. And the more time that passes, the more certain I am that I never will do it again, because my life has just changed it's completely different now. So yeah, that was kind of a very long answer to that question, but those are the three main bombs, I would say, and series of events that happened in my life. Wow.
It's so powerful, and it's amazing how these things kind of, they travel in packs, you know. Yep. I want to dive into this actually, and you don't have to worry about truncating the story. I mean, that's the point, is we need to tell these things. There's a lot there, from the development of bipolar disorder, to, your struggles with, I guess alcoholism is the best way to kind of call it. You said you were drunk every night?
Yeah, like not passed out every night, but I drank every single night for, say 99% of nights for 10 years. Wow. So, whatever you want to call it, it's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I don't want to shy away from the first topic, because I know that, on your website from drunktomonk.com, there's a video called Shining a Light, and anybody who is wrestling with any of these issues really needs to go and spend some time and watch it. It's a very powerful video of a speech that Jason did, and I was just kind of in shock and awe when I watched it. But I'll ask you brought this up, but how does one develop bipolar disorder?
I'm not sure that there's a really good answer to that question. It may be partially hereditary. I think that she had, like, for example, she had a very traumatic childhood, and I think that she never wanted to talk about that, right? Ever. So she really wanted to move past it. And when I look back on it with the benefit of time and hindsight, I think that maybe, trying to outrun those, you can't outrun your demons. They will always catch you. And I think that, maybe that played a part in it too, that she just tried to stuff it down. I'm talking a horrific childhood. So, maybe that was part of it. I don't really know what the answer is. I think it's different for everybody. And when you realize that you go to get treatment, you realize that nobody knows how to fix it. You know what I mean? You go to a psychiatrist. This is one of the things that was so devastating about this, was that you feel completely helpless. Like when she finally figured out it was bipolar disorder, I thought, okay, we'll go to a psychiatrist, we'll lay down on the couch and, talk about it a few times, get fixed up, and then we'll move on.
Right. Like an auto repair shop. Just replace the parts and good.
Yeah, not so much. So it was more like, try this medication, come back in a month. Oh, you're still doing terrible? Try this medication. Try this medication. Try this medication. There was one point where she was on 4 to 5 very powerful psychiatric medications, and I can remember calling her psychiatrist and screaming at the guy, saying, like, what are you doing? You're like, this is worse, actually, probably than bipolar disorder itself. She was a zombie, barely alive. So yeah, there's a lot of unknowns about it for sure.
I can't imagine the struggle through all that, especially with the kids. And how old were they at this point?
Yeah, so they would have been, she really went downhill from right after our second daughter was born, right? So,
wow.
Yeah, and my parents were a huge help, and, I had to work, and there was a lot going on. And and then again, as they got older, the challenge was to try to shield them from, as much as possible, from what was going on, which was it was possible because they were so young. They're 12 and 11 now. There's no way I could ever dream of doing that now.
No.
But, and that's one thing I'm pretty proud of myself about how I handled that was protecting the kids and trying to raise them as normally as possible.
That is the hallmark of what I consider to be a rad dad. And, that's something that through my circumstance and a lot of our guests, you put your kids first, put first what matters most is what I like to say. And that's what matters most to me. So I applaud you for that, and especially in that circumstance. Thank you. As far as the drinking goes, you said you had a bunch of kind of cliche excuses, and it sounded like you knew that they were excuses when you were saying them.
So here's the thing. I had created this. I've only realized a lot of this fairly recently, like even within the last year. But I really created a persona around myself as a guy who was a leader, who had his stuff together, who, didn't experience like a super wide range of emotions. Like, you know what I mean? Like a tough, strong leader type guy.
Of course. Yeah. The alpha male. Of course. We all know that person.
Yeah. So drinking was, I looked at it, I don't know. I looked at it like I'm doing well at work. I'm a good dad. I am a good husband. If I want to get drunk at night, I say this now and it sounds so absurd, but I'm good enough, right? And I did not realize at the time how crippling the words good enough are. That is the worst thing you can settle for in your life is, I'm good enough, so I'm just going to stay stagnant. So, but anyways, I had created this whole thing around myself where I was fit, I was athletic. So I just had rationalized it to the point where it was okay. So I did, in my heart, I knew it was a problem, but I couldn't admit that out loud. No way could I admit that out loud. And so a lot of times I spent in my head thinking that it wasn't, buying my own propaganda, I guess you could say. But in my heart, I knew it was a problem. I spent so many mornings feeling guilty for stuff I'd done and said, and, but I just kind of get up, start the new day, go work out to show that, what, I got this handled. It's not affecting my work. just, so in my heart, I knew.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was just being able, it was having the courage to face the fear of saying it out loud.
Yeah. That's the biggest thing, is to have that humility,
Yep.
Wow. And so you went cold turkey. Now, before we get there, it sounded like your wife was a huge supporter in all this. And through the fact that she knew you so well, you were, vulnerable to her, whether or not you realized it. It sounded like she was very capable of asking you the right questions and challenging you in the right ways.
She was. And so what's interesting about that is, just to provide a little background, is that, she came into our lives and, became the girl's mom. And, to my kids, she's mom. And it's the greatest gift they will ever be given in their life. And I know they already appreciate it, but they will appreciate, as they get older and older and older, they will realize it for what it is. But at the beginning, I was the parent, and so it was really a very interesting thing where she was coming into our life. I knew how to be a parent. She was still learning. She didn't have any kids of her own. Mm-hmm. And so I was kind of, in a way, I don't want to say on a pedestal because that's not the right word, but I had more knowledge than she had about a very important topic. So it was kind of like she was coming up to my level in a way. Mm-hmm. But what happened was I stayed stagnant because I was drinking all the time. And she continued to evolve as this amazing human being. She was becoming more spiritual. She was getting involved with our school and building a community and expressing her artistic side and meeting new people and trying new things. And, and so I could actually see that, okay, I see, like, she's now evolving past where this great spot I thought I was. She's becoming at a different level now. Mm-hmm. And if I extrapolate this out further into the future, this gulf between us is going to be huge. And what is it going to happen then? So that was a contributing factor. But what that did was that made me respect her so much that I actually looked up to her in a way. Well, obviously I looked up to her. And so it gave her words. I mean, even though, God, I fought back against some of the things she said so hard. Yeah. And, but I knew she was right. And I knew that if I'm the guy, seriously, that wrecks this relationship, like what she has done for my kids and for me. And if I'm the kind of guy that is actually, watching her be worried about my drinking and not doing anything about it, who am I? And if I let alcohol destroy that relationship, like, what does that say about me? Those were not things I was willing to confront, or, I just couldn't let it get to that point, I guess.
Right. It takes a really strong person to go from that alpha male bravado, that attitude, that good enough attitude, to see, this unfolding, the story you just laid out, and the fact that, your wife was evolving and she was growing. And, first of all, I would feel challenged if that happened to me. And a lot of times when guys feel challenged, that's when you go into fight mode. That's when you bristle. And that's when, you make the situation worse. It sounded like you were aware enough of this to be open to the possibility of, okay, well, wait a minute. Now I need to make adjustments myself. It sounds like it's just a huge win, because there's so many different places in that, just this little story you told now, that you could have dove off into the deep end, and, just those poor choices could have wrecked another thing in your life that is more valuable than probably everything, all the monetary things.
Yeah, you're right. And I just want to make it clear, though, I fought back hard, man. So I don't want to make it sound like, I was completely aware and watching this all unfold and sitting back, contemplating. No, I fought back hard against it.
It's really important that you said that. I thank you for bringing that to light, because, there's no struggle. There's no one-sided struggle where one person is right. And, I've made those mistakes as well. And having the humility to admit it to yourself, just when you're in your own head, is something that is a huge positive change. And then to be willing to admit it out loud is totally another thing. So thank you for your honesty there. And I would hope that people would take your example. Our audience would take your example and say, you know what? Yeah, I need to be accountable to the things that I've done as well. So thanks for bringing that to light.
You're welcome.
Awesome. We've covered a lot of ground, actually. And it sounds like, there's been epiphanies and lessons learned and all sorts of things. You said you went cold turkey from alcohol. Was that a problem? I mean, because, when you have a substance that you rely on and then you just remove that, then there's this withdrawal period.
No, I didn't drink, I wasn't drinking a, fifth, or I'm Canadian, so I'm thinking metric. We call it a 26, or I guess, but, 750 milliliters of, I was drinking every night, but I wasn't drinking to the point where I was physically dependent on it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, it's weird. It really I just realized I was done. And what's interesting about it, though, is that all I knew was, okay, this time I feel like I'm done. I can't say that I knew I was done, because how could I possibly know that? I had failed, so many times, but it felt different. And then what happened was, as a little bit of time went on, when it was like a week, and I was like, wow, this is I'm not even thinking about it really. And I feel it feels different this time. And then, after a period of, say, a month or two, my life started to get better. My relationship with my wife started to get better. I started to think, what I actually started to think, to be honest with you, was, oh my God, if I managed to stop this, there's nothing I cannot do. Because this thing was, you want to talk about emotional anguish I put myself through every single time I wanted to quit and failed. I failed hundreds of times to quit drinking, right? So, that's a lot of negative reinforcement. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, there was various points where I said, okay, I can't quit. Jesus, how many times do I have to try to quit and fail to realize that I just cannot quit this? This is me. This is some flaw inherent in me. And I just need to do everything I can to make all the other parts of my life really good, and then deal with this. That's, and then to go from that to actually stopping, my mind was blown. And that was what really started oh my God, all these fears. Because one of the things that prevented me, I talk about it a lot now, and thinking of in terms of abundance rather than scarcity.
Yes.
But what I did was I created all of this scarcity around the idea of quitting drinking, which meant I invented all these fears that I thought were going to come true. Like, oh my God, okay, if I quit drinking, what am I going to tell my friends? You know, are they even going to like me? Am I going to be able to socialize with people? I can't socialize with people if I'm not drunk. Like, it's the only way I know how to socialize with people. You know, like all kinds of stuff like that. Like
Wow.
and so what I would do is I would build these things up into my head so huge that it was actually easier just to quit, to continue to drink. So then what happened was I started to see, as my life started to get better, I started to have this mindset of, oh my God, there's nothing I can't do. I get that now. I started to see things in terms of abundance. Like, oh my God, if someone had just told me that actually stopping drinking was like about 1,000,000 times better than drinking, you know, if somebody was able to convince me of that in those terms, instead of, yeah, just get through it, you know, quit and just get through it and fight your way through it, I think I would have quit. I might have been able to stop earlier. So that's what I always tell people. In fact, I was just talking about this with a guy last week, and I said, you know, he called me out of the blue and he had read something on my blog, and this is the amazing power of putting yourself out there. And he's basically in the exact same situation. Wife is bipolar, and he's drinking himself into oblivion every night. And I said, all I could say to him, you know, we had a long talk, but ultimately I said, I'm not going to tell you to quit drinking, man. I can't, I'm in no position to do that. But what I can tell you is I have been exactly where you are at. Not drinking is, trust me, man, it is 1,000,000 times better. Just trust me. Like, you know, I mean, there's hope, you know? And so that's why I look at it. I kind of think, you know, people say, oh, are you in a program? Or no, the program is, you know, being aware of all the possibilities that not drinking has created for me. That's the program.
It's amazing that we came across this topic and you're on the show at this point in time. I've told nobody this, and this is something that I've been holding myself accountable to, is that I haven't had a drink since the new year. And everything that you said about it, and I never had a major problem with it. Of course, every alcoholic says that, right? Mm-hmm. I never had a huge problem with it, but now that it's not in my life, like, I don't even need it. I don't think about it. And what you said about your life improving is absolutely true. Like, I am way more focused. I've got way more energy. You know, I'm not precluding that, you know, maybe I'll have a beer occasionally in the future, but right now it's just not even on the radar, and worrying about what your friends are going to think and what society, who cares?
Yep.
Who cares? In the long run, does that even matter? So I thank you for bringing this to light. And it's awesome to be able to have you on the other side here and be influencing people, and, you know, being able to talk like, you know, that this person who contacted you through your blog, being open to that. That's fantastic. It's a huge win to be able to motivate and influence people in a positive way. So, you know, thank you for doing that.
Yeah, it feels great. And, you know, I would just quickly say on the subject too, that, you know, when I was drinking, I wasn't doing anything to move my life forward. I wasn't doing anything that I was passionate about. I was drinking, right? So now that I've stopped drinking and have all this stuff in my life that I'm passionate about, like talking to you, like talking to other people, like writing. I didn't know I was a writer. I didn't know I loved it. I had no idea. Now that I'm doing all that, there's no way I'll go back to drinking, because that would prevent me from doing these things I love. You know what I mean? Like, if I'm going to sit around and get liquored up, I'm not going to write. I'm not going to be on a podcast interview. I'm not going to be doing all of these things that bring me so much happiness that I never allowed into my life before. So it's, that's the best program.
So clutch. I just want to dive into this, but we've hit it pretty good. And people, if you want to know more, you know, it's the Book of Open and FromDrunkToMonk.com are Jason's blogs. Check out some of the speaking engagements, like I said, on the website From Drunk to Monk, shining a light. And I'm sure you're just available all over the place. You're in Facebook groups. I know, you're part of the RAD DADS Facebook group as well.
Yep.
And, you know, we look forward to having engagement, there from all the RAD DADS. So, all right. Thank you. We're going to try and push forward here a little bit. Okay. So quickly here, do you have a motivational quote or a mantra or something to help you to, you know, kind of emerge and or keep going through this, your crater, your bomb craters here?
I would say the one that I've come up with that was really a result of me finally understanding the power of vulnerability is when you lay down your shield, you will become invincible.
I read that. I read that on your blog, and I love it. It's so true. It's amazing. So given your circumstances, it sounds like you're finding success today, just being vulnerable and being true to yourself, being exactly who you are, and removing, poisoning thoughts, people, and substances from your life. Do you have any other pointers for us?
Yeah, I would say that, for what I've learned is when you allow yourself to be vulnerable and put the authentic you out there, what you will do is you will create a place of safety for other people to feel comfortable enough to finally share their authentic selves. Because I'll give you an example. I gave that speech at Shining a Light. So that was to about 300 law enforcement professionals. That was pretty raw up there. I mean, you watched it. So and I've had people reach out to me. And the whole point of that talk was the power of vulnerability and for each and every one of us in that audience and in the world to make change by just sharing our stories and allowing ourselves to be vulnerable. I've had people reach out to me and tell me their stories, like they're really in a bad place. And the reason they did it is because they said, you know what? I watched you up there and I thought there's no way this guy's going to judge me. And so I guess my point is when you are, your authentic self, warts and all, and being comfortable in your own skin, you create a safe harbor for people to reach out to when they need it the most. And those connections that you make with people based on your authentic selves, they are the most powerful and meaningful connections you will ever make in your life. And when you have those connections with people, anything is possible.
That's the crux of it right there. That's the crux of life is meeting and engaging the important people in your life, the authentic people who resonate with who you are at your core. If you try and keep up with the Joneses and be somebody else, I mean, that's not going to take you where you need to be, where you want to be. So, in this road to success where you found yourself here, this question almost answers itself, but, what role did your kids play in this?
Oh, well, it's funny. My kids I'm like everybody listening to your show. I mean, if you're listening to your show, you're probably a good parent by default, but, yeah, my kids play a huge role in my success, because, or just in my journey, because I look at everything. It's funny, everything I do now, I guess always, but more so now, I look at in the context of my kids. So, for example, one of the things we were talking about before we started recording was, I'm at the point right now where I have discovered the thing that I'm passionate about. And I am approaching that point where I'm going to make a very significant pivot in my life from, a 9-to-5 job to a entrepreneurial, being of service to people journey, I guess you could say. So, but what I want, like when I think about that, my kids are involved in the sense that they understand what I'm doing because I want them to, it's so important for me to make this happen so they can see that their dad was never constrained or limited himself and took chances and made a change that would paralyze most people with fear and they would never do it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I want them to see that they're not trapped, that they have possibilities everywhere. And that's so like when I look at making the shift, that's a huge motivation for me, so yeah, they're also, I would say that, they're a huge motivation for me to never drink again, right? Because I've talked to them about it now. And I've said, I give you a quick example. Like I was talking to my daughter the other day and she was saying, she was having a little bit of trouble at school. I said, why didn't you ask for help? And she goes, I didn't ask for help because, I don't know, the other kids weren't asking for help. And I just didn't want to be the kid that needed to ask for help. I wanted to try to do it on my own. And I said, oh my God, let me tell you how that's worked. Let me tell you how that typically works out for you, right? So, I guess it's, everything, trying to get my kids, being vulnerable allows you to talk to your kids and ask for your kids' input and keep them involved with what you're doing and just making them part of the whole process and the whole journey.
It's so true. You're leading by example.
Right.
But beyond anything else, beyond the verbal conversations that we have with our kids or anybody else, I mean, leading by example is the most powerful tool you can employ in your archive of tactics. And it sounds like, by doing that in your own life, being open and vulnerable with your kids, you've achieved this level of communication that a lot of parents just dream of, and understand that it starts with you. It starts with you leading by example.
You're absolutely right.
In your journey, was there someone in particular that you would lean on that was your rock?
Yeah, I would say that it's my wife.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure it is. And I mean, we've been through and there's probably a million more reasons. But she is the one that really opened my mind to the idea of thinking in terms of possibilities. That's probably been the biggest mind shift that's happened to me. That's changed the way I look at the world. So, and she brought that to me. So, and I can remember finding it extremely annoying at the beginning where I would say something like, here's why X isn't possible. And she would say, what else is possible? What would it create if you decided to do this? And I would think, oh, no, listen, I'm just telling you why it's not possible. I don't want to think in terms of, so, she beat me down basically. And now and I could see the results it was having for her. So now she's my rock. And in fact, I would say too that the longer we are together, the more that is true, because as we grow together and as we are, vulnerable with each other, and our lives just become more and more intertwined with one another. And so I look at it now, like it's funny, when we first got together, I had just, come out of a long relationship that ended tragically. And, I had some, I don't know, like protective mechanisms or whatever,
Oh yeah.
For sure. And those are long gone. And, it's, I don't know, I feel like we're obviously separate people with separate, lives, but I mean, we're so intertwined. I can't even imagine life without her. I can't even imagine making a big decision without, her being the first person I go to get her counsel. It's just amazing. So I feel so lucky.
Yeah. It sounds like you found somebody who was able to challenge you in the right ways. And I think that's a really important distinction, the right ways. There's a ton of people out there who want to challenge you. You want to challenge yourself, but she sounded like she had a way of asking the right questions. And how dare her make you think about the answer, Yeah,
no kidding. No kidding. And, I would say too that on the challenging thing, like it's a very important lesson for our kids too, for everybody's kids, that to see that everything that we do, even when we get annoyed with each other, it's always underpinned by a foundation of love and respect. So our kids can see how two adults can disagree with each other or challenge each other about something in a way that is constructive and not destructive. And that is a hugely important lesson for them to learn and to be able to see it.
Yeah. Excellent point. Excellent point. So in moving forward here, if you had a success strategy or technique, a succinct little brief to tell, people going through a similar situation here, what would you tell them?
I would say, again, it's probably just a summary of what we've already talked about, but I would say be vulnerable. Have the courage to be vulnerable and be your authentic self, and always look for ways to help people. So one of the things I want to do, and this is a good example, is one of the things that I want to do to help people understand this concept is I'm going to map out, like, visually, so it's really clear, all the things that have happened to me in, say, the last couple of years. First I did this podcast and that introduced me to this person, and then I got involved with this guy and, contributed content to his forum, which made him, and because I want people to see how it can work. Like, it's really not complicated. But when I do that, the purpose of it is, it's interesting for me to see it too. But I want to be of service to people. Providing that to people, I think, would be a huge service, because people think it's a lot more difficult and a lot more complicated than it really is. So that's an example of seeing an opportunity and just wanting to help people, right? So if you do that and you live your life that way and you're honest and trustworthy, man, the possibilities are limitless. Yeah. So that's my advice.
You're describing tribe, the concept of community through tribe. And it's just like every member has value, and it sounds all woo woo, new age, call it what you want, but it's accurate. It's absolutely accurate. You're living it, and I'm seeing it too. It's amazing when you put yourself out there, what the results will be. With that, you need to move toward the right people and away from the wrong.
You're right. You hear some of the guys, like, there's a famous quote, right? But you're the average of the 5 people you hang around with the most. And
Rad Dads have heard that several times.
Yeah, that's right. And you gotta up your peer group. And the other thing I would say on the back to the previous question was, don't become attached to the outcome. Become committed to putting yourself up there and getting in the game, right? Because I'll give you an example. If you had asked me a year ago, would I be pitching a book proposal to a publisher next week, I would have thought you were crazy. But what happened was, I continued to do these things, the things I was talking about, and somebody reached out to me when I launched the Book of Open, and I had basically no stories when I launched the Book of Open. I thought, well, I'll just try this idea and I'll write my own and see if I can get anybody else to share theirs. And guy reached out to me who's published 8 books. He's been on Oprah. He said, man, I love what you're doing. Are you interested in writing a book? And I said, hell yeah, I'm interested in writing a book. And he has guided me through the entire process. I know more in the last month about the publishing industry. I knew nothing before. So we've written a proposal, chapter summaries, mission, goals, all this stuff. And he's helping me because he wants to pay it forward, right? So, anything can happen, and be open to the idea that your life could take a turn that you could never imagine. Just be open to the fact that it's possible and exploring it.
Oh man, that is a podcast in itself right there. But yes, I love this. I love to hear that, good things happen to good people with good intentions. And that's what's happening. Congratulations with that. And keep us informed of the Book of Open, the actual physical Book of Open that I assume that's going to be a working title, but keep us informed, and we'll go ahead and broadcast that on all our channels.
I appreciate that.
Hopefully we can have you back for a little, like a book launch or something. I don't know. We'll see how that works.
That would be great.
Awesome. So we're going to go into the really quick Q&A, like short answer, 1 or 2 word. So what's the most original term you use in place of a curse word while in front of your kids?
Oh, I use frick. It's close enough, but it's not really a word. So.
Yeah. What's your favorite age for children, and why?
I think my favorite age is right now. Whatever the age is, it's always right now. So there's good, it's funny. I just quickly, I look back I remember loving when the kids were 3 and 4. Now that they're 11 and 12, I think back to them being 3 and 4, and I think, oh my God, that seems like so much work because they're so much more independent now. But I've loved every age.
Yeah. No, it's so true. It's so many people say that too. What's your best dad skill and or superpower?
I think my best dad skill is, it's funny, I wrote a blog post about this, but it's what I call the art of conversational questions. So that is something I think I'm really quite good at, and that is being able to ask your kids a lot of questions about their lives in a way where they feel like you are coming from a place of love and genuine interest rather than being, that you're grilling them or that they're part of some kind of inquisition.
Yeah. Awesome. Excellent. And I cannot emphasize enough, gaining and learning the skill of asking your kids the right questions in the right ways. And that's how you engage them. Awesome.
Absolutely.
So we went over your best. What's your worst dad skill, and how do you mitigate it?
I would say my worst dad skill is probably paying attention to details. I'm not a real detail-oriented person, so the kids, 11 and 12, I can't speak for boys, but 11 and 12 girls, oh my God, they talk a lot. and which is great, but they'll tell me a story, and I'm like, oh my God, after 30 seconds, I'm like, I cannot listen to this anymore. It's just too much detail about so-and-so said this to so-and-so, and then he said, so I would say that's maybe a weakness of mine. So I try to be the kids are extremely clear about what I am capable of and what I'm not. So I think I mitigate it by admitting my own shortcomings. I want to hear what you have to say, but man, it can't be like 5 minutes of, he said this to this, and then this person did. I can't do it.
Yeah. Okay. That makes perfect sense, actually. What's your bad parent pet peeve? What's, you see a parent doing something in the playground or out in the public. What is that thing?
So I think that the logical person in me at maybe a macro level, the pet peeve is I see this so often, and I don't understand why parents cannot see that how their behavior is contributing to the outcome they're getting with their
Yes.
kids, regardless of what it is. It blows me away. So what they do is they double down on the same behavior and say, and it just causes more of the same issue. But I think that, to a specific example of that would be not meaning what you say, right? So explaining to the kid why something needs to be done. And if they don't do it, not following through with that, or not ensuring that the child follows through with the thing they're supposed to be doing. My kids are very, very aware of things like, if you disagree with what I say, just talk to me about it. I'm completely open that I can make a mistake. However, whining, there is a 100% chance that you will never get the result that you want by whining. Yeah. It will never happen. It makes no sense to do it. So they don't do it. Because why would they? Kids are as emotional as they can be, and as emotional as adults can be too. We're inherently logical, right? Yeah. So, so I think it would be, not being consistent and not following through with what you say, and not admitting when you made a mistake. That's another thing I see a lot too, is that, parents will say, they'll get upset. It's a natural thing. They'll make some ridiculous threat that they're not going to follow through with, and then they either don't follow through with it or they double down, and because they're afraid of appearing as weak, instead of just saying, look, I overreacted there. So I think that was more the one, but
they're just key. They're just quintessential. And that kind of moves us into the next question here. And I could go down a rabbit hole with those things too. Totally agree with what you're saying there, by the way. So name a cornerstone trait you're trying to instill in your children, and why is it important for them to have?
I am trying to instill the ability to think in terms of possibilities. I want them to be, so I'll give you an example of that. Like, I want them not to be limited by, we draw boundaries on our kids from the moment they are born. Okay, they're born with pretty much a blank slate, and then parents draw boundaries with rules. Society draws boundaries about what is acceptable behavior. School draws boundaries. I want them to not be constrained by those boundaries. I want them to be their own selves. If they operate within a, moral framework of kindness and trustworthiness and those sort of key things, do whatever you want. I will support it. If you want to dye your hair blue and move to Africa and be a goat herder or whatever, that's cool. Whatever you want to do, as long as you're happy and you're living a life that's, congruent with those key values. So I'm open to the idea. I've talked to my daughter about this. We send our kids to private school. If you don't want to go to a public high school and you want to come up with some alternative approach to doing it, let's talk about it. I'm open to anything, because there's a billion ways to live your life. And I don't want my kids to be constrained by what everybody else is doing.
Yes. So much yes right there. Just that whole statement. I love it. Awesome. What does the term lifelong learning mean to you?
Again, lifelong learning means being open to the idea that opportunities to grow and expand your knowledge exist everywhere, and that you don't know everything. So whether it's a person you meet on the street, if you are open, you will learn something from them. If you walk into the forest and you are open to it, you will learn something about nature that you didn't know. There's, it's 2016. There's opportunities to learn everywhere, whether it's on the internet, you can connect with people all over. The idea that you graduate high school or go to community college and then, I'm glad that learning phase is over. It's just being open. It's being open to receive the wisdom that is all around us.
Well said. And yes, as far as the whole learning season you just spoke of, I remember thinking that too. And it was like, oh, sweet, I don't have to learn anything anymore. And it's just like, well, now I see kind of where my fault was in my young life. Yeah. If I had been open to the possibility of lifelong learning, I would tell you that I would be definitely well ahead of where I'm at right now in my own version of success. Not that I'm not successful where I'm at right now to my definition, but I would be in a much more comfortable place. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And this is one of the things I tell my kids too. Like I tell them, look, I'm 42. Okay. I'm telling you, you're 12 and I'm telling you, you're learning, I'm teaching you what I just learned at 42 and you're 12. You got 30-year head start on me. This is big.
Awesome. Cool. Well, coming full circle back to movies, do you have a motivational movie, something that you watch and you just say, yes, that's it, whatever it is? What's that movie?
Of all the things I've admitted, this is going to be the hardest one to admit. I think it's Pumping Iron.
Yes. With the Governor. Nice.
Yeah. I don't know what it is about that movie. I think it's just because it's so absurd when you watch the movie, but I think it's just that Arnold's willingness to defy convention, I guess, and his, ability, his self-confidence and his charisma and all those things. I just love that movie. It always gets me, pardon the pun, but pumped up.
Oh, totally. Yeah, absolutely. For anybody in the fitness crowd or otherwise, the bravado, the character, the confidence, and then the whole thinking outside of the box. It's pretty amazing. Whatever your thoughts are on our former governor out here in California. If you could teleport back to your how did I get here moment, that when you sat up in bed and had that epiphany, what book, advice, or resource would you give yourself to help you along?
That's a great question. And now what I would say is what really changed the game for me. So after that moment where I woke up and I was, I think I'm going to quit drinking. And then I went through this phase where I said, like I was telling you before, oh my God, I can do anything. But then what I did was I didn't do anything. I just had it in my head that oh my God, I'm capable of doing anything. And then I started to feel a ton of pressure.
Yeah.
Like, okay, if I believe that I can do anything and I'm not doing anything different, what does that mean? Does that mean that I'm actually at the limit of my capabilities? So what ended up happening was I listened to this podcast and Hal Elrod was on it. I don't know if you know Hal.
Oh, I do. Yeah. We feature one of his quotes on the website. Actually, that's one of my things.
Yeah. So what I was thinking was I listened to this podcast and he started talking about the miracle morning. And I thought, geez, I don't know. That seems like maybe I'll try that for a month. That changed my life, man. It changed everything for me because I just starting the day, it made me, you know what it did? It made me understand that wins don't have to be colossal accomplishments, that just starting my day with a winning routine that was focused on just me counts. And I felt different immediately. And, man, that's just, it just changed my life.
Excellent.
I've tweeted him this a number of times and saying, oh my God, man.
And you're not alone there. There's a huge community of Miracle Morning people. I'm actually in 2 different Facebook groups for Miracle Morning.
Yeah. It's so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree there. Dads, check it out. All right. I'm not going to sit here and tell you to do it, but it resonates with both Jason and myself. So there's validity here. So Jason, do you have a cause for charity that you'd like to draw everyone's attention to?
I think a cause that I'm personally quite interested in is the issue of mental health.
Yes. Yes.
And it's more in general it's not really creating awareness. I'm kind of sick of that word of awareness. Everybody knows what, there's mental health issues, but I think it's for all of us to create a place where it's safe for people to talk about mental illness. So there's some causes up here, like Shining a Light was one of them. I do some work with the police on mental illness and mental health, awareness and action. There's a new one on Twitter called Sick Not Weak, which has some Canadian celebrities that are trying to make a difference as far as raising awareness and taking action on mental health. So I think it's obviously because I've lived it and been touched by it personally, but I care deeply about those issues.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk a lot more in depth about that, both on your blogs and on the Shining a Light video as well. Yep. We'll have a link to the Sick Not Weak Twitter feed on your show notes. So this is your soapbox. Is there anything you would like to add?
I would say, again, just to reiterate, I may sound like a little bit like a broken record, but I can't stress the importance of this to the dads out there. But be courageous enough to embrace who you truly are. It will change everything. It will change your kid's life. It will change your life. It will change the dynamic in your family. You will touch and change the lives of people that you cannot even imagine, and it will change your worldview. So, all those things that you beat yourself up about, or that you think that if people knew about them, they would judge you, stop being afraid of them. We all have our stuff, and that stuff, is what makes us unique, rich, full, authentic human beings. And if we just stop being afraid, it'll change everything. And we'll create a place that's safe for other people to do the same. It's this virtuous cycle that I want people to really think about doing and making that change in their own lives.
Absolutely. Rad Dads, here it is. I'm trying to bring you wisdom, and Jason just dropped the hammer on you. Okay. How can we get in touch with you? How can we follow you? How can we support you?
Okay, so you mentioned my website. So there's fromdrunktomonk.com. I'm not actively updating that one too much anymore. I've really switched over to the Book of Open, but there's a lot of great content on From Drunk to Monk. So again, thebookofopen.com. You can email me at jason@thebookofopen.com, and my Twitter feed is Le Monk de Funk.
Nice.
So L-E Monk DEFUNK.
Little French Canadian theme there, right?
That's right.
Love it. Awesome. And then, so the physical book of Open, we're looking forward to that, and we're cheering you on. Let us know how that develops, and we'll go from there.
That sounds great, Walter. Thank you so much.
True pleasure having you on today. Thank you for joining us and sharing everything you bring to all our rad dads out there.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for this episode of We Rad Dads. I sincerely thank you for joining us. Don't forget to look us up at www.weraddads.com. There you can find links to our Facebook page and Twitter account. Got a question or comment? It may be featured. Email me, walter@weraddads.com. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks again for joining us. And remember, stay up, stay connected, and stay rad, dads.